you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show, the Coventry City podcast that is going to shit in your face and then do it again. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
Hi, buddy.
And Laurie.
Hi there.
I think last week, I might be wrong, we started off by saying that it had been somewhat of an uneventful week and that trying to get moments of the week was a bit difficult. It seems that they saved them all for the last 7 days.
God, yeah. Probably the last 2 minutes of the Wimbledon game.
Yeah, quite. No, but I think it's been a very action-packed 7 days, so I'm expecting some pretty exciting moments of the week to come from you. Laurie is the guest. Do you care to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Mine was kind of predictable. It was equalising yesterday against Wimbledon, but mainly because I was in the away end, so it was pretty spicy, celebrating in a kind of muted way, but like I'd had a couple of beers by that point and I really didn't try very hard at all. And I was with my mate who's an AFC fan, and I just kind of like lost my shit a little bit. And the kid next to me, who looked like a bit of a simpleton, was just really, really angry. And yeah, I think if I'd been a slightly less kind of like, I don't know, they're just such a pleasant bunch, AFC Wimbledon fans. If I'd been like any other away end, I think I probably would have got sorted out. But yeah, it was quite a fun experience celebrating that goal, just little old me.
How was the experience of being in the away end?
Well, I just finished writing the blog, and it's actually really nice, because you know how when you go to Cov home games, you're just surrounded by people who, they obviously know who's rubbish. They will have their gripes to all the players, and they're very vocal about it. If you're in the away end, no one knows any of your players. Like, they've all got their own problems, and so you're alone in this hatred of your own team, because they're all just worried about their own crap players. So it's actually kind of nice. You could just watch in relative peace, considering problems that people around you don't care about at all. Like, if anything, if your players do badly, they're all really happy. Instead of really, really angry.
Do you think this might be a permanent fixture for you, an occupation in the in the away end at home games?
I don't know. It wasn't awful. It's really bad when they score. Like, that has to be mentioned. So as long as we always don't concede, and even scoring's a bit annoying, but maybe just 0-0s, then yeah, fine. But other games, more difficult.
Yeah.
Definitely try it though.
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind you're saying it wouldn't be particularly good if we were conceding goals. I'll probably give it a miss for a bit. For another 50 years or so. Paul, moment of the week.
Yesterday, as the game went on, I got more and more irate, and yeah, it would have been quite nice not to be surrounded by people, I suppose, like me, who towards the last 5 minutes was deciding that Jerry Sterry, Lewis Page and Jordan Turnbull probably should never wear the sky blue, well, the white shirt again of Coventry City, because they are shit. And then listen to Mowbray's post-match interview, which was, and I'm going to say it because it really wound me up at the time, possibly the most self-indulgent interview I've heard for a long time, where it was like, well, we've got this defence that's like 19, 20, 20 and 21. It's like, you built that back four. I'm sorry. You can't bitch about something that you've built. You didn't have the money. We're going to discuss this later on. We have to start every conversation with, we know Sisu haven't helped, but, and it's like, we know Sisu haven't helped, but, if you know you've only got really inexperienced centre-halves, don't go out and buy inexperienced fullbacks. Just go out and get like someone 25, 26 who's played in League One. They're not going to be expensive. They're not going to be on millions of pounds a week. You can buy pretty standard League One players, especially at places like fullback, pretty easily. You're the one who decides to go out and get Jerry Sterry. The fact that I think he's slower in the foot race than you are, Joey, which was really evident. Oh, he couldn't. And then Lewis Page, I know I don't particularly rate Lewis Page, but the more you watch him, the more you're thinking, Ryan Haynes must have done something to someone who Mowbray loves, because there's no reason that Lewis Page is getting on that team. And it's like, I know he doesn't have much money to spend. If you're going to buy a player, buy someone better than Jordan Turnbull.
Ryan Haynes must be over the moon that Mowbray's gone. He might actually play now.
It's like, And then, but you listen, the more the interview went on, the more you started to feel a bit sorry for Mowbray, as you could clearly hear that, he was going to resign. And I know you've mentioned this, you mentioned this with the Fleetwood game, and I think people sometimes got to understand where we're coming from. We don't know any of the people individually or personally. We don't really want to. It's not really why we're doing this. And there's no denying, and a lot of people have said it, and I think it probably is true, Mowbray probably is a lovely guy. And people say he's a football man through and through, and no reason to deny that. I'm sure he is. And anything that we say about any of the players or Mowbray is not personal. It's not against them as people. It is against the performer that we see. And it was, by the end of the interview, I was slightly less mad because he did sound like a broken man. I'm sorry, the half laugh. He did sound like someone who just almost didn't quite know what to do with himself. I don't think he could quite explain it. And what's been quite interesting today is the fact that he's been given the opportunity to hammer the board, which would have been quite an easy thing to do. But at least he's been big enough to admit that he's made mistakes as well. And one of those mistakes in the transfer window have hindered us. And it takes a big man to make those sort of admissions when you're a manager and you want to get another job.
Yeah, I think I've got nothing against the guy. Laurie, your thoughts about sort of Mowbray as a man, if that's not too weird a question? And pointless a question?
Not the easiest on the eye, but yeah, I agree. I think he's probably a nice bloke. But I think the way he ended that interview is really telling. I didn't actually listen to it, but the way they had to write down, that's it really. That's kind of the perfect thing. He's saying empty words to he can't think of anything else to say. That's it really. It's over, isn't it? Yeah. And that's kind of been the nature of your whole tenure. It's just well, that's done now, isn't it? That was not that pointful, but yeah, I felt a bit sorry for him as well because it is a poison chalice. It's a crap job, isn't it?
Oh God, you literally wouldn't wish it on it. I mean, there's nothing about the club you'd wish on anyone. You wouldn't wish, let's hope that Sisu do sell the club soon, but you almost don't wish the club on anyone to buy it because it's just, it's a shit football club to own. There's nothing really.
Because if you approach it without any of the if you approach it without any of the subjectivity, all of us have got all the sentimentality and stuff. Brass tacks, it's so unappealing. All my friends just take the piss out of me endlessly because they're I can't think of a less inspiring team to support than Coventry. I was well, I can't disagree with you. That's just right, isn't it? There's nothing going on, nothing, and there has been nothing going on for a decade or more. And
I think it's worse than that. I don't even think that it's I don't even think that there's nothing going on. I think it's actively toxic. I think that the atmosphere between fans at the moment is back to near 2012 peak levels of acrimony and name calling and whatever else, and the everything. The owners are absolutely rotten. Just nobody's trying to help the club in any sense. A constant self-interest. Results on the pitch are awful. And have been for 46 years or whatever it is. It's just I don't even think it's as good as what a sort of boring team. It's vile. It's just absolutely vile, isn't it?
Where does it end, though? Where does it end?
Well, when someone has asked that on Twitter, and I know we were going to get on to things later on, but at the end of the day, you sit, and as you say, you're almost we're obviously big Cov fans. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if we weren't Cov fans. You wouldn't be travelling up from London. I wouldn't be travelling down from Manchester with Joey if we weren't big Cov fans. But you look at it and you're there's nothing there. If you were going to buy a football club, if I won the lottery and won £1 billion, you could go, okay, I want a team in the Midlands. Apart from maybe Walsall, and if you class Port Vale as in the Midlands, there's no one else who are in a lower situation, like Derby. Get bigger gates. They have done for a long time. They own the ground. Notts Forest, bigger name already. Notts County have got a big name in world football. you've got Villa, Birmingham, West Brom and Wolves are in far better situations than us. And then you look around the rest of the country, like, you know, Bristol City. People go, oh, Coventry's a big city. It's like, yeah, same size as Bristol. If Bristol City ever got themselves sorted, that's a massive sleeping giant. And they've, again, in better situation because they own the ground. It's just, it's not even the fact that we don't own the ground. It's the fact we can't even buy the ground. We can't even get the ground. It's like, okay, you take over Leeds, you don't own their ground. That's fine. You can buy their ground off the person who owns it.
Yeah.
You can't do that at Cov. You can't come in and go, okay, I want to buy the ground. It's like, you can't. Wasps own it. Oh, who the fuck are Wasps? They're from London? It's like, oh, okay. Why do they? Don't worry about why I own ground in Coventry. They just do. And it's like, well, and then like you feel for people like Mowbray. Mowbray obviously tried his best, and he was hindered by some of the decisions people above him made. And you know, money is a big thing, isn't it? It's like he did only bring in one or two players for money in his entire tenure, and you know, to some extent they have been on balance some of the better players like Vincelo and Jody Jones.
Right, I think we're going to come back to this later, aren't we? Just for the sake of completion, that anybody will be surprised. My moment of the week was, of course, Raider Johnson. I should add that that's not any specific, not necessarily because of who it was aimed at, just because of how normally insipid footballers' interactions are. Just for him to come out with such force, just in the way that he did, just that brilliant broken English of his. I just was gobsmacked when I read it. And that was a day where it seemed like just the feeling between Cov fans was particularly poisonous after we'd been beat by Gillingham and everyone throwing mud at each other. And then something like that comes along and you're like, nah, sometimes it's fun, isn't it? And I think hopefully everyone took it in the spirit in which it was intended, which, you know, I don't think
Pure
really,
hate.
Well, I don't think you really meant it, did he?
He didn't just say it. He was like, I'll shit in your face and then I'll do it again.
That was why it was so perfect. And then just as a sentence, it was just so perfectly constructed.
But if you thought that was a mistake, wait, just let me repeat myself. That was not a mistake. I meant to do that.
Yeah, like once wouldn't be enough.
Did you read the retort?
Oh God, yeah. It just seemed a bit needless. It wasn't like he was going to tweet back and be like, "Oh, sorry." It just felt, well, there you go. I can understand people being bummed out on both sides, but who cares? I just thought it was a funny reaction anyway.
It was amazing. Yeah, I know. I like read it, but like, also, why do you feel the need to respond to something where someone's literally brought up a playground argument? They're going to do a poo in your face, and you thought you need to write an entire article to refute why you don't deserve that.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's almost, it's just the absurdity of the entire situation is what fascinates me. Is just, like you say, why would Raider Johnson respond in that way? But then why would a newspaper feel the need to write like a opinion piece about it?
So this is the same newspaper that wrote a piece about someone who rang up the radio.
Yeah, quite.
So, yeah. I mean, it's just like the whole world of Coventry City's gone slightly balmy. But I think sometimes, and I know us three are on Twitter, and sometimes Twitter can seem damn sight more important than it actually is.
Yeah.
But most of the time on Twitter, as you say, it's more like you're sat in a pub and someone you haven't seen for a long time comes in who you know doesn't like one of your mates, and you'll just go, "Ugh, twat," and walk off, and you're like, in a pub, you'd almost not bother responding. But on Twitter, because you're 100 miles away, you can sort of continue to play the big I am. And the whole thing just comes across as you say, completely childish.
Yeah.
But still hilarious.
It was indeed. Those events took place in the direct aftermath of the Gillingham defeat. Laurie, you were there, weren't you? You were our roving reporter for this week.
Yeah, I was there. And I only made a decision to go right at the last minute. Like, I'd sworn never to go to Gillingham again, but then it was such nice weather, I was like, I might as well go. It's only an hour on the train. And things were looking pretty good, to be honest. Like, we started playing... I can't remember whether we started playing... Oh, that was it. We started 3-4-3. And Kyle Reid was just... I've never seen him play even, like, 7 out of 10, and he was just, they were giving him loads of space. He was on fire, really. He was just like always running with purpose, creating chances, shooting. Gillingham didn't really look up to much. Bradley Dack looked like I remember you saying once, Joey, that Tudguy looked like he'd been sleeping in his car for a week. Bradley Dack looked like he'd been sleeping in his car and had a microwave in there as well, and like about 100 Dr. Ockers, like, because he just, when he's playing well, he looks like kind of a ballet star, but when he's like just having a bit of an off day, he just looks like man from street on pitch. And he was a bit like that, because people have been branding him as like the best player in the league, so I just thought I'd put that to bed early on.
Through
and
nothing
then
more than the aesthetic qualities that he possesses. Just completely dismiss his ability on the pitch. Nah, he looks like shit.
Yeah, exactly. Just completely objective. So yeah, then we scored. Kyle Reid. Big Romano was having a dream. He was just had his radar on, amazing touch the whole game, picking passes, spreading play, covering loads of ground like he does, snapping at heels. And he was involved in the build-up for Reid's goal, played a neat ball inside, ended up at Reid's feet, and he just, hammered one into the far corner. Marvin Sordell had done his best to knock the keeper out about 4 minutes before that, so he might have been a little bit seeing stars still, but yeah, it was a good goal, and we were winning, which felt kind of weird for the few fans that were there. It's really, really trimmed down our away following. I shouldn't be surprised, but for some reason it does surprise me quite how few people are going.
I gather that was the lowest away attendance for 15 years or something.
It wasn't that long, was it? It was it 2011 at Middlesbrough?
Oh, was it?
Middlesbrough,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry,
on a Saturday, I think it was.
Yeah, I think me and you were there, Joey.
Oh God. Yeah, okay.
What was the score?
I can't remember. Joey can't remember going.
No.
I think that was the game where we were stood there and this guy walked up to us, a good friend of mine's a Middlesbrough fan.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We were stood there just having a chat with a mate who's a Middlesbrough fan. He was wearing a Middlesbrough shirt. His dad was there and his mum was there. And this guy Conch's a shithole. And it's just stood here having a pint.
Glass houses, mate.
Yeah, it was, when someone's really sort of got it in, and you just stood there sort of, I don't understand, A, why you picked on us, who were just obviously having a civil conversation. B, it's I don't understand why you've launched into this vitriol about sort of Coventry. It's I don't really, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to get out of this.
Do you know when else it might have been for a Middlesbrough game? Would you remember the Cov fans getting all haggy because of a conversation that you'd have with Gary Hoffman?
Oh, probably, yeah.
I'll keep it brief because we're well off topic, but I think this is worth going into. What would it have been? This would have probably been 2011, wouldn't it?
It'd have been around then, yeah.
Yeah. Is that Gary Hoffman was with the supporters at half time, and sort of a load of people had brown nosing him and whatever. And I can't remember how the two of you had got talking. I don't think you'd made a beeline for him, but you'd had the temerity to ask him some questions that weren't, please just buy the club under any circumstances, even though you have got a checkered past. Every Cov fan that was in the vicinity were just like, leave him alone. He's going to save us. Yeah, they got really desperate, didn't they? It was
the good thing about
embarrassing.
One of the funny things about all this CC stuff, because let's face it, you got to look at the funny side at some point, is the people talking about getting back Preston Haskell.
Haskell, yeah.
And you're like, just bring back Joe Jardinza. Let's go the whole hog for nutters who have tried to take over this football club. I know we have nutters in charge, but it's almost doesn't mean we want other nutters in charge. What we want is someone who's slightly sane at last.
Wasn't it very heavily alleged that he hadn't actually got any money, it was all his dad's, and that he spent most of his time on boats with questionable, nose practices?
That's why we're on this, because this is my final point on this one. It's you get the Richard Keys myth as Caesar was dodgy from day one. Jeffrey Robinson wrote off 30 million, and you're like, yeah, the previous owners, they were genius, our previous owners.
Yeah.
The ones who got us into a situation where Caesar was seen at the time as the saviours. How fucking shit have you got to be when Caesar was seen as the saviours.
Yeah, Jeffrey Robinson. That's some incredible selective memory, that is, that you'd be like, yeah, God, do you remember when it was... No, yeah, I do. I remember exactly what happened.
Do you remember when we sold our chance to have the Rico and we sold Highfield Road? Do you remember those glorious days when we went from a club who were solvent with their own ground to the mess we're in now? Oh, yeah, they were the glory days, they were.
Again, sorry, we'll bring it back to Gillingham in a second. When we were on the verge of entering administration prior to CC buying us, hadn't they appointed some sort of nominal administrator who'd come in to have a look at things? And in 1 week, he reckoned that £2 million had disappeared out of the club that nobody could account for at any point.
I remember talking to someone when there was the whole Caesar out thing in 2012, and he was sort of saying that, there were rumours of sort of cabinets which just no one's allowed to look in because, there is some dodgy deals going back, all the way to the Richardson era in the 90s and, the signings of our Honduran players and, you're like, well, where the hell were the Daily Telegraph then? That's when we needed the Daily Telegraph. Fuck Sam Allardyce. We wanted to know what was going on in the 90s at Cov. But, I think if we just don't libel ourselves and just say Coventry's been rather badly run, corrupt, for about 20 years and just leave it at that.
I think we're all right with libel because somebody would actually have to listen to this for it to be actionable. Yeah, I mean, if you slander someone in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, is it still legally actionable? I believe we were talking about Gillingham, Laurie. So, do you want to pick up from wherever we were?
Yeah, I'll try to get through it so we can get back onto Jeffrey. But obviously we weren't ahead for very long because we have this habit of not learning from our mistakes. They had a guy who had a really long throw, and a few times we allowed him to throw it in, which is fair enough because he's allowed to do that. But we just hadn't bothered trying to win the first header. And then eventually one of these ended up on the head of their defender. But he wasn't that close to the goal and it was angled. So he got there quite early, he was towards the edge of the 6-yard box. And it just went so slowly towards Reece Charles Cook's goal. You're like, surely that's not actually going to go in. And you have that one of those goals where the home fans cheer like a bit and then a bit more and then a bit more and then it's really loud and you're like, oh, okay, so they've been watching that go in for the best part of a second and our keeper still couldn't get there. And people were giving him grief on Twitter as usual, but I didn't really see if it was his fault. And then we continued to play well throughout the first half. And Mowbray obviously was sick and tired of that, so he switched the formation in the second half to 4-4-2. And the second half was kind of a non-event. They started playing a little bit better. We lost all fluency. Gadzev had a shot. It was the second half was a bit of a non-event, and just when we were kind of looking like we might get a point, Sam Ricketts just inexplicably just missed the ball, and he was right next to whoever else was playing centre back at that point. So this guy, who scored it? It was not. Just had acres and acres of space to wait for Reece Charles Cook to come out, and he just slotted it into the far post. And we didn't really have any chances after that to equalise. There was no urgency as well, which everyone was getting so pissed off at. We had a corner with 10 minutes to go, and people Lewis Page was taking everything, just ambled over there, he was walking to the corner spot. And it was at points like that where I just thought, I know it's sunny, mate, but you could at least pretend that you're a little bit concerned that we're going to lose at a team who definitely isn't very good. So it just ended in no kind of blaze of glory like it did against Wimbledon last night. It just kind of petered out and nothing much happened, and it was very, very disappointing way to spend a Saturday.
Firstly, I would say, I would like to know how Marvin Sordell played.
Marvin Sordell, he was fine. he didn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't as he had.
Which is
I'm
actually a
comparing
ringing
into that
endorsement
game
of
with
players at
Millwall when
the
he
moment,
had kind of a
isn't
lively start, but against Gillingham, he was competent. But the only player who you'd really remark on in that first half for us was Kyle Reid, because he was just that good. And Marvin Sordell, yeah, I think he was doing it. He also looked good because Andre Wright was so bad. He's just a clumsy lump, and he doesn't. He kind of reminds me of, when we had Chuba Akpom on loan for a few games, and he was technically pretty good, but just quite nervous all the time. And you could kind of see that he had talent. But Andre Wright's nervous in a similar way, but you can just kind of tell that it's going nowhere because he just has no access to control of his limbs, and even his goal yesterday was representative of that. It felt to him it was physically impossible for him to miss, but he still just looked a bit sketchy even when he just tapped it into an empty net.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, he's just.
Do you know what it is? He didn't shoot. He ran into the ball.
Yeah, that would be it.
Because he looked like he was completely straight leg, his knee wasn't bent at all, and he effectively just shanked off his chin, from what I could tell. I've watched it a few times because it looks like a FIFA goal in the sense that the computer had glitched, and that there's no way that a person's body shape would be like that when a goal happens.
Yeah, my favourite thing about that goal as well is the defender who is between him and the goal, and the ball comes past him, and he just sees it. He's like, "Sweet, I'm just going to absolutely lump this into next week. It'll all be good. We're going to win 2-1," and he just agonisingly misses it. He just about touches it, and you just see him punch the floor. No, you cannot be serious.
I also like the fact that guy's about 2 yards offside.
I didn't even notice that. Is he?
Yeah, I didn't know. At the time I looked. When you look at the lines and you're like, oh, he hasn't flagged. And I looked on Twitter and someone was like, our guy was about 2 yards offside.
Oh, is that why they're all kicking off the defenders?
Yeah, because I think if you watch it again, I've only watched it once very quickly on my phone at 1 o'clock last night. But I think he is clearly offside. But yeah, I didn't care at the time. It was we've equalised. Maybe we're not completely shit.
That was my favourite thing about the defender. He probably was aware that offside melee was going on, but he was so disgusted with his own behaviour that he just couldn't even think about it. He was like, how have I not managed to just kick that ball? That's all I needed to do. So Sordell, fine, kind of like the pavement. He's just there. He was doing the job.
And as a question to both of you, Laurie first and then Paul on to the MK Dons game. Oh, not MK Dons, sorry, Wimbledon. Jesus, that's offensive, isn't it?
If I was you, I would definitely delete that. Edit that out.
And I was worried about what Jeffrey Robinson might do.
Put that in a cabinet.
And then Paul, moving on to the Wimbledon game, did anybody hear anybody singing either of my Dan Agyei songs?
Oh yeah, they wouldn't shut up.
I thought so. I'm glad that I've not influenced culture like that. Paul, I take it you didn't hear any of it?
No. No. Yeah, Wimbledon.
Can I just say one more thing? Because it was one positive, which I'm now going to just mention at every game, because it seems to just happen all the time. Just Ben Stevenson. Can we, in how bad this podcast is going to be, I just love him. I think he's absolutely great. He got brought on 10 seconds before we conceded, so he was probably feeling pretty crap because Mowbray made that change, was going to settle for a draw, and then we were losing, so he had to then bring someone off straight away again to put another striker on. But Ben Stevenson just I know he's played a few games now, but he just looks so composed and free of nerves, always just picks a great pass. He doesn't hang on to the ball for too long. He's no Maddison. He's not going to go doing backflips and tricks and that kind of thing, but he's got a shot on him. He knows when to pass, he knows when to shoot, and people trust him. I just think he's let's enjoy him for the next 6 months.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Sorry, Joey, but it's like you stand there, and I was talking to a guy yesterday, and I was like, the problem is you've got no heroes anymore because there's no point falling in love with Ben Stevenson, which is what you'd have done back in the Prem days, or even some in the Championship. It's like just quiet admiration, and then just think, at least in 10 years' time, you can go, yeah, I saw Stevenson make his debut. Yeah, I was there when he played for Cov. And when he's sort of tearing it up at a Premier League club, you were like, yeah, I saw him when he was like, I knew he was going to be good when I saw him when he was 18. And that's about it. That's all you can say, isn't it? Because, he's clearly too good for League One. I mean, he stands out and we're shit. And he stands out.
But I would throw into the mix on this that I think he's oddly symptomatic of why we're a bit crap at the moment. Because I really, really like the look of him, and I think we need to be careful as usual not to shit ourselves over a player that we've seen play 8 times or whatever. But the nature of player that he is, I'm not even sure that he'd be in my first team at the moment because he's a flighty, passy, lovely to easy on the eye style player. And I'm just not convinced. That feels like us at the moment. It feels like you've got 2 fullbacks who have come down from higher clubs and they've been like, well, I'm going to play the game. There's this thing that really irritates me of we're going to play the game properly. It's just like, win a game. Do something to win a game rather than, well, we're not going to lose our, principles or whatever. You'd be like, yeah, but you're getting beat every single game. You're getting clattered. You haven't headed away a set piece in 2 months. Just do that for once. And I'd really like the look of Ben Stevenson, but I think we desperately need a different ilk of player at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, I agree with you, yeah.
Yesterday, Jordan Willis and Chris McCann put in 2 great defensive clearing headers. Okay, it was us with the corner, but they were 2 of the best defensive headers.
I had a feeling that was coming.
Jordan Willis was he cleared the penalty area. That was from a free kick on the corner. It was a great defensive header.
Tell me about the other atrocities that you witnessed last night then.
Well, I mean, I'm going to fall out with someone on Twitter who sort of pointed out that I thought I was wrong. Yesterday we played 4-4-2 and Biggie played on the right-hand side of midfield and Chris McCann came back in. Now, I'm going to say Chris McCann because, as you know, he hasn't really impressed me yet. He was really good yesterday. I mean, he actually was stand out. That's the player I expected us to have. He kept things simple. He moved it. And one thing I disagree with you on Ben Stevens, I think, yeah, he's not particularly a crunching, tackling, super sort of central midfielder, Dennis Wise-esque. But what he did do really well yesterday was he managed to pick up a lot of second balls. And he does know where to stand to intercept easy passes. I mean, Wimbledon don't overly do simple passes. They like to bypass their midfield. But when you've got 2 big lumps up front against our defence, why would you play through midfield? It's like, that just seems ridiculous. And then we scored after we gave away really easy possession in a half because Biggie Kevin Kyle tried a back flick that didn't work. They got a corner. We counter-attacked from the corner. Get this, we countered with pace with Kyle Reid, who was taking on his form from Gillingham, who had a pretty shit shot that the keeper really should have done better with. He fluffed it. Sordell scored. And what we were talking about last week of Sordell just getting games, he scored. And it was a great goal from 2 yards with his wrong foot. And we were all happy because we'd scored in the first half. And maybe we weren't going to be shit against Wimbledon, as we all thought we might be.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good thing about playing... Let's be honest, that was our 5th home game. And Wimbledon started the game in 21st place. So they were obviously the sort of team we could beat because they're shit. If you exclude the fact we've also played the teams 22nd and 23rd at home and failed to beat them.
I thought you didn't look at the table until November.
No, we all look at the table all the time. We stare at the table. I stared at the table most of Tuesday night going, oh my God, half the teams in this division, in fact more than half the division, have twice as many points as us. Fucking hell. Bury, who I'm sure have got millions of pounds from their rich owner, are like second with 20 points. I wonder if they've got Prem loan players at fullback. Anyway, so we were playing all right. I mean, it was pretty even. Neither team were dominating. Both teams had spells of domination, but you wouldn't really say either team was dominating. And then just before half-time, they had the ball in our third, not really going anywhere. Chris McCann decided to bundle someone over from behind for no apparent reason other than idiocy. They had a free kick, they floated it in, they won the first header. And then you saw Reece Charles-Cook flying out of his goal and you were thinking, this is brave. And their player got there before him and you're thinking, that was stupid. And it was 1-1 and sort of parity and normality had been resumed. And then second half, we played all right. They played all right. We made some subs. We took off Carl Reid. That annoyed me, but apparently he had a hamstring strain. But, I mean, again, Carl Reid was playing quite well. We moved Sordell to the left wing, even though he was having quite a good game through the middle. And then we sort of put Agai sort of through the middle, and you were like, well, why you move Sordell out of the position where he was playing quite well? And then they scored from another, was it a long throw that we didn't deal with at all? Having given them a really easy long throw because we're still trying to play it out the back. Jordan Turnbull likes to let the ball bounce at least 16 times before he tries to deal with it. And you're like, just hack it clear. Just try and win the ball on the first bounce. Okay, maybe the second. Oh, okay. Just kick the ball out of play now because that's your only option. And they scored, and then it was all a bit shit. And then Wimbledon decided with 15 minutes to go, well, 5 minutes of normal time plus the 9 minutes of added on time, they were just going to try and keep the ball in the corner. You're like, you've had 6 chances. Like, you've proven if you put in a corner, you might go 3-1 up. But luckily, you're being retarded and trying to keep the ball in the corner. We went up the other end, the ball bounced around the box a bit, and Andre Wright scored with his body, and we equalised, and it was all great, and I was happy. But then, like, the reality...
Paul, do you know where the 9 minutes came from?
Haven't got a clue. And it's like, I thought the referee... there were spells in the first half where the referee was possibly our best player. Because he gave us some decisions that were just weird. But, I mean, I think he'd obviously got money on 2-2. Okay, that might be a bit libelous. But there was no reason for 9 minutes at all. It was like, I know the play was down for a bit, but 9 minutes was a bit absurd.
Do you think they put 6 up and he just had the board upside down?
Well, I think I've got no sympathy for Wimbledon, but as I said, they had a clear advantage over us all game, and that was physicality. I mean, they were bigger, stronger, and you were just like, I don't know what it was like in the Wimbledon end, because obviously you were there, Laurie, when they were holding it in the corners, did none of the fans just go, why don't you take a proper corner and just go for a third? Because you're winning everything in the air. Or were they
seemed pretty content.
They was happy that was just stupid, but they were happy with it because they were winning.
Yeah, they were a revoltingly happy bunch, to be honest.
So, and then obviously we had the post-match interview, and you were like, well, that doesn't sound particularly good for Mowbray, and then Mowbray left. And, you've got lots of people going, but he's the best manager in this division. You're like, well, we're bottom of the table, we haven't won, and we barely scored a goal. And if he was the best manager in the table, we wouldn't have the back four we have because he'd have bought some players who aren't Jerry Sterry and Lewis Page.
Yeah, I like the way he simplified it when he's like, when you're not sticking him in and you're letting him in, you're going to struggle. Like, yes. Amen.
Well, so the other week when I was ill, I had a look at what what happened when he left Celtic. And sort of what he basically said at Cov is what he basically said at the end of his reign at most other clubs, which is, we're fine box to box, but we're not good enough at defending, and we wasn't really scoring at other clubs, but it was like very much we're fine box to box, but defensively we're not very good. And you're like, well,
that's important, isn't it?
It is rather important. Like in the 5 away games, we've played 5 away games this season. We've led in 3 of them, and we've picked up 1 point. And you're like, I'm sorry, but that's got to be down to some. That's very important, not giving away leads. Or even if you're going to give away a lead, just don't then lose the game.
Did you see the other statistic that came up earlier this week? That we have spent more time in games winning than we have losing. So
yeah.
Far. Yeah.
But one of the things is, and I'm not sort of trying to rewrite history here, because I think we discussed it at the time. When he first joined, his substitutions were always a bit, okay. He's like, in-game management has never been the best. And that's got to be part of why we don't get stronger as games go on. We actually get weaker. Because it's got to be down to some of the substitution or lack of substitutions or decisions he makes. Because the game, yes, it was crying out for Tugguy to be taken off. Or, you could have put Jody Jones on the left wing when Carl Reid went off. He could have done something to keep Sordell up front, because Sordell was our main threat. He was our best centre forward. And it ended up, when we desperately needed a goal, him on the left wing. Now, I know we equalised anyway, but we equalised basically because they gave us a free kick. The ball pinged around the area.
Yeah, they gave us a goal, didn't they?
Yeah, they gave us the opportunity, but we didn't make the goal. We didn't build the goal. So, but also, as I said, I do have a lot of sympathy for Mowbray, and this is where it comes down to my final sort of, my rationalisation of why I thought yesterday was the end for me, is because I saw us trying to do flicks. I saw a point where, Biggie had the ball, and he was trying to play a simple 5-yard pass to Jerry Sterry. He was trying to play a 1-2 with him. And you're like, we're bottom of League One. Just punt it away. There are times where you've got to put your ideals to one side and say, we're in League One, we're bottom of League One. Maybe us trying to play out from the back isn't the thing we should be doing. Maybe at times we should take a pragmatic approach and just twat the ball out. Because what that'll give us the time to do is reset. We can reorganise. We can get back in position. And not only that, the ball's 50 yards away from our goal. And the fact that even yesterday we were still trying to do little tricks. We're overcomplicating things. We're like, either this is what Mowbray wants or he's not getting his message across. Because the players don't appear to have, as Laurie said earlier, the urgency to accept the fact that we're bottom of League One without a win. And them farting around doing little tricks isn't what we needed. What we needed was a victory. And what we needed wasn't 5-yard passes in our own third. What we needed was to clear our lines.
Yeah. I think we've also, the mentality of our players, even when we were doing well right at the start of last season and we were having to score, a lot of goals to win games, just holding on to leads long term has always been an issue for us, and that always strikes me. It's that just represents a weakness in the mentality of the team. As soon as you go up by one goal, people aren't thinking, oh, we've got the ability to hang on to this, we can win a game 1-0. They're thinking, okay, this is we're going to need to score again, aren't we? Or this is a matter of when they equalise. And Mowbray teams are the ones that I've seen for Cov, I've never seemed like the kind of teams that would grind out victories. I know that sounds like a cliche, but there was never any toughness, and I think to get out of this league you just need to be a bit nasty, and we've never been nasty.
I don't even think it's fully nasty. I just think you have to have some level of edge to you, but I think that's true of most leagues, not just League One.
Yeah.
That you need to be able to do something extra. Even the prettiest teams, even if you... Oh, fuck it, I can't believe I'm doing this. We have to go mad about Mowbray doing it. Even Pep's Barcelona had got Busquets and Puyol, who are killers if they want to be. And I just think that you do need to have something. And I look through that first 11 and just go, there's nothing there. There's no murderer. There's no there's just no. I just want a bit of edge, and there's none, is there?
Well, that's the thing. It's when you go back to the time when Arsenal were winning league trophies, it was always the fact you have to, if you're going to beat Arsenal, you have to win the fight as well as the game of football. And with Cov, it's a case of, you can let us win the game of football if winning football is basically passing to a teammate, because other teams know they're going to dominate the other aspects of the game, which is the dominant side, the physical side, the actual... I mean, this is my issue with Jordan Turnbull. It's down to one big thing. If the ball's there, he doesn't try and attack it. And I heard Mowbray sort of go, well, is she down to inexperience? It wasn't. But it was we saw Ben Turner when he was 18, 19. He didn't know which balls to leave or which ones to attack. His philosophy was, I'll attack every fucking ball. And it was the same with Scott Dan. It was Scott Dan was only 20, 21 when he joined. And his philosophy was, I'm going to attack this. I'm going to win this, because they can't score if I've headed this ball 30 yards away. And you're like, Jordan Turnbull doesn't do that. And when he comes out and goes, I didn't bring in someone, the big solid centre-half. It's maybe what you needed was 2 big solid centre-halves instead of 1. Maybe what you need is actually just someone who's going to physically win every battle. We're in League One. It doesn't matter if you can pass or not, to some extent, because what you want him is to win his battle, which is against the opposing striker. And I haven't seen, and I'm, take Jordan Sunwell, I haven't seen Ricketts or Willis do that either this season. I haven't seen any of our centre-backs physically dominate, or even, not even physically, but mentally dominate against the striker. It's like they're always playing catch-up. And also think, to some extent, going, oh, my players are sort of, they're only kids, they're only sort of young men. I think that does give players excuse to sort of, well, I'm not meant to be winning this battle because someone will come out and, I'll be let off. It's like, no, just fucking win it. Just, show me that you want to win that ball. Even if you miss it, I'd rather you went for it and missed it once than you just like letting every ball bounce and letting the striker get in front of you. Or like what happened yesterday 3 or 4 times, like Turnbull was in front of his man, but he was waiting and waiting and waiting for the ball to be at the perfect height. By that point, the Wimbledon player had actually got in front of him. You're like, you can't keep waiting. You can't, time waits for no man. The football waits for no one. It's the person who wants the ball who's going to get the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you only have to look at the goals that we've conceded recently for evidence of it. I mean, you're looking at a really, really high percentage of either set pieces or organisational mix-ups. So where players have been out of position, specifically the full-backs, and have just got straight in behind them. And I just think that, and I guess this feels like a natural way of moving on to talking about Mowbray and sort of his, the COV 18 months that you get now, is I just think this season, I just can't fathom the bulletproof nature of him for some fans, when I just think there's so much of it has got to lay at his door this season. And again, like you said at the start, we have to caveat it with, we're not saying that Sisu aren't terrible owners. They absolutely are. And I think he seems like a nice guy, and I think it must be a nightmare of a job to have. But I'm not sure how much of that filters into setting your defence up to defend set pieces over and over again. I think it's things like that where you have got to go, he has got to take some of the blame for it. Laurie, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, obviously there are these issues that you can't ignore, but when it comes to like basic things, like those are things you can compartmentalize and just be like, surely if you're in that position as the manager, you'd be like, all right, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But when I get on the training ground, there's nothing Sisu can do to affect what I tell my players. So I can at least do that. I can do that bit of my job, which I really like, and I thought I was good at, and I can drill everyone perfectly. And then it really annoys me, the comments are made about how the defence are so young. It just seemed like a really cowardly thing to say. It was like, he's 19, he's 20, he's 21. They're babies in a man's league. And I thought, as a parting shot, like, all right, you're leaving, fine. Don't then go and like drill people's confidence who you've already given grief just for their age. You then said, oh, they're fucked in this league. Like, they can try, but they're going to go nowhere. That's essentially what he said. They're babies in a man's league. Like, how is that helpful? Yeah, that really annoyed me. But
sorry, like, on put in. But the other thing is, I goes, and I was trying to bring in Premier League loan players. It's like, well, so the player you missed out on, was he like 25 or 28?
Yeah.
You're still talking about, I didn't get this Premier League loan. It still would have been another fucking kid.
Yeah.
It's like, as I said, like you could have kept Aaron Martin, who's 26, which we said last season. When you said, I'm not going to play Ricketts every game and I can't play Kieran Harris every game, you were like, okay, if you keep Aaron Martin, that means you only have to bring in 2 of the centre-backs, because you only need to bring in someone to play alongside Aaron Martin, and then potentially another reserve, and then you've got Ricketts and Kieran Harris. But when you got rid of Martin, it's like, well, you have to bring in 3 centre-halves. And not only have to bring 3 centre-halves, they all have to be better than Aaron Martin. And it's just a case of he's brought in 1 centre-half who's inferior to him. And I don't think he wants to play Jordan Willis at centre-half. I think he wants to play Jordan Willis at right-back. I don't think Jordan Willis is his first-choice centre-back. So it's like, you've made... And this is the big thing for me, but it's also like, you've got to pick your battles. Like, you've got a base squad. You've let it go down to 7 players, which means you've got to bring in 13. So while you're looking at the centre halves or central midfielders, you're not focused. You've got to bring in so many players on such a small budget. You're making so much work for yourself.
You also had the cheek to say you don't build anything with loans. I'm like, did you actually just say that? Like, you've literally gone out of your way to jettison youth players who are perfectly good in like 3 of the back 4 positions. Well, if you include Aaron Martin as well. So Ryan Haynes, Phillips, Aaron Martin. And you've replaced all of them with 1 signing and 2 loans. It's like, are you high? What are you talking about? Like, you can't just make up excuses. Like, that isn't a real reason.
But I said this last season, and I got like some. There was no and I said this the other week. There's no progress. There was no. Last season was a one-off season as much as this season. They wasted the transfer windows because they didn't build for this season. They gambled last season, and even in his post, he was like, "My attitude is to bring in Premiership quality players." And it's like, yeah, you bring in. That's fine. Like, the last players you brought in last season were fine because they were brilliant players. But the thing is, what you had was like quite a few just standard League One players. I know, obviously, he's been hindered by the fact that Chris Stokes has been injured, but it's like at the back you had Stokes, Ricketts, who for bits of the season was a standard League One player. You had Raider Johnson, Ben Turner. Okay, they're probably better than League One, but they are sort of just standard, bog-standard players. They're not wonderful players in sort of technical terms. As much as I love Ben Turner, he's not particularly the best passer.
Take Ben Turner out of that list, though.
Okay, but you got Aaron Martin, who's just a solid player. In midfield, you had John Fleck, who's a solid League One player. You had Vince Lowe's a solid League One player. He had a better base on which to put these star players. And the fact is, he's like, your star players this season aren't that star to start off with. Mm-hmm. But he hasn't even got the best right backs, like people like Brian Burrows and Roland Nielsen. I know they're sort of different class, but they were just, you knew you were going to get 7 out of 10 of them. They weren't wonderful players. Like Roland Nielsen sort of was, but not at that point in his career when he was like 32. But you knew what you were going to get out of him. You didn't have to worry about, is my right back going to be shit today, or is he just going to be his normal self? And it's like, the problem was, it was like we didn't know we were going to get a good Lewis Page or shit Lewis Page. So I don't want to be wondering about so many players on the pitch having good or bad games. But I just want someone to be solid.
Sorry, much as we slag him off this year, is there any real difference between this time last year and the current season, except for the goals of 3 players? We're probably playing exactly the same kind of football, making exactly the same kind of mistakes, but you've just got someone banging in goals at one end.
I would contest one slight thing on that, and it's probably, splitting hairs. I think I've said this a million times, so I'll keep it brief. I don't think we were playing, when we were good, I don't think we were executing Mowbray's game plan exactly as he wanted to. I think we were doing well in spite of that plan. And I don't mean that to sound churlish or that I'm having a go at Mowbray, because he brought those players in and it was successful. But we were not playing beautiful passing football but we had fast, strong, instinctive players who, and crucially, we had Adam Armstrong, who could basically do anything. He could just create a goal wherever he fancied it. And I think that you take that out, that's massive. But I think you can look at 3 separate things. I think you can look at a functional midfield with bite in it in Vincelo last season. I think you can look at a dynamic, when we were good at least, a dynamic attacking front 3 in Kent, Murphy and Armstrong, who scared the Jesus out of everyone. And we had, admittedly, only for the first half of the season, Raider Johnson and then Ben Turner, who were just so dominant. Just so dominant. And we haven't got any of those 3 things. But I would suggest that I think the worrying thing for me about the way that Mowbray put the team together is I just don't think he recognised... I think he only recognised the need for a dominant centre-half, but then didn't get one. And also jettisoned Aaron Martin to the bargain, which just increasingly just looks like just such a poor decision.
Where is he now, Aaron Martin?
Oxford. The thing with the dominant centre half is he didn't really need to go out. He don't have to spend much money. He could have just got a 28-year-old. I mean, there were just enough standard. But the other thing, with the Kent thing, it wasn't just those three, because you also had Jim O'Brien and
Madison.
Ruben Lemaire and Madison.
Yeah.
So you almost had like a better squad. And I mean, I saw someone tweet earlier. Goes, "Oh, how's Mowbray meant to do anything with this squad? It's just loan players, journeymen, and kids." And you're like, last season was loan players, journeymen, and kids. It's just,
isn't that every squad in League One?
That is League One. That's what you're dealing with in League One. Like, let's not pretend that any other club is different from that. Every club is the same. So you've got to use what you've got, the budget you've got, the players you've got, to the best of your ability. And earlier I put out sort of, what will you remember of Mowbray in 10 years' time? And I said, well, the thing that will always stick in my mind needs to be the manager who played 4-1-5. And some people were like, let's not get away from it. Up until the 18th of November last season against Gillingham, including that game when we played, after 18 games we were top and we were playing scintillating football. No one expected us to be where we are now. No. I know we talked about this last season. It's like, no one expected. If you'd have said, after that Gillingham game when we walked out, we're going to sack Mowbray within a year because we haven't won we haven't won in the first 10 games of next season, I think you'd have carted him off to the mental asylum. You just wouldn't, this wasn't.
But you could also see how that could happen, couldn't you? You'd be like, the best players we own will go, the ones we don't own will also go, and then from that point you're like, okay, it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, I don't know, because League One is.
I see what you mean.
League One is full of shit teams, but also, as you say, it's like the way that we were playing. You were thinking, well, that's got to be Mowbray's plan, to play with three really fast attacking players with creativity behind. That must be his, raison d'etre. That must be how he managed to get West Brom promoted. That must be his style of play. And when you see this season he's gone away from that, you're like, okay, maybe, as Joey says, maybe it was just, he bought in he got lucky last season with the signings. We got unlucky this season. But, as I said, there were some glorious moments. Like, we'll never forget the Gillingham game when we absolutely caned them. And Jacob Murphy scored that hat-trick.
Ibra I love as well.
I think so. It's an interesting one. How will you remember him? For someone that I was critical of, I'll only almost exclusively remember him fondly, just because of the strength of feeling I have about games like. I mean, you think about the individual moments in games: Millwall away, Gillingham at home, Crewe away, Bury at home, and I know that we played two very poor teams in those games, but we did slaughter them, didn't we? And we're not really lucky enough to be able to look over that as Cov fans, are we? It's not like we're blessed with that. That's a once in a blue moon that we get a 5-0 or a 6-0. And even last season, we did kill some teams, didn't we? And I think I find it hard to look past that, even in spite of what I think was, a pretty cataclysmic downfall.
I mean, let's face it, without Mowbray, we would never have had Joe Cole, and we'd have never had that free kick against Barnsley. And
Ben Turner coming back.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying. As I said, you almost like when we were top, it was only praise for Tony Mowbray. Now we're bottom. I'm not saying it's only Mowbray's fault, because I don't believe it is. I believe it's there is maybe it's 40% Mowbray, 60% Sisu, or the percentages are around about that. But at the end of the day, yesterday wasn't good enough against an AFC Wimbledon side who were there for the beating if we were a decent side. And just watching us basically celebrate a 92nd minute equaliser against AFC Wimbledon at home wasn't good enough. And I've been and ahhing on whether or not I was sort of wanted him to be sacked. It was yesterday was the first time it was like, maybe Mowbray he can't move away from his ideals enough that he can actually help us out. We need someone now who's going to be a bit more pragmatic. And it's horrible to say, because, we always say, what you want is a manager who wants to play lovely football. But the reality is, sometimes, it's the same way that when Andy Boothroyd, when it wasn't working for him, playing Route 1 football but ugly. When it isn't working for someone who's overplaying the football, it's just as ugly. It's just, if you're losing, it doesn't matter how you're losing, or if you're not winning, it doesn't matter how you're not winning. It's just the same outcome comes.
Shall we look at wrapping up then?
Yeah.
Do we want to throw any names into the hat of who we would like to take over? Are we anywhere near that yet?
Steve
Paul?
Cottrell, maybe.
Steve Cottrell, Paul?
Why is he out of a job?
Because he got fired by Bristol City towards the end of last year. And I don't know why no one's picked him up.
Oh, where were Bristol City?
They were seriously struggling. Lee Johnson.
In the Championship, weren't they?
In the Championship, yeah.
I mean, I've seen names banded around. I don't know. It's one of those, you never know who's out there.
I think after seeing Steve Jones celebrate Rotherham's promotion with his gut just like hanging out below his shirt over his trousers, I know that's like body fascism with me, but it was so revolting. I just don't want him anywhere near our club.
It's going to be him. It's going to be him.
But the thing is, it's just, you almost probably would have been better if Mowbray had actually just stayed for a couple more weeks. Because whoever comes in now's got 2 months, 3 months, October, November, December. They can't bring in any players. So they've only got what we've got. And you're like, what do you do with that team? For me, you go a little bit longer, not all the time, I'm not saying route one, but you go a little bit more direct at times just to sort the defence out. But the only other option to defence is bringing back Ricketts. It's not like there's anyone out injured. Even people like Andy Rose are out injured. You're like, wow, that's great. I've never been overly impressed with Andy Rose anyway. It's not like, for me, he's a brilliant footballer we're lucky to have back. So,
but we can change the system and we can look at other people like Ryan Haynes. Don't mean to go on about him, but he can play. See how the players react to a new manager. I don't think it's having him for another 3 or 4 games would have improved the situation for whoever's going to come in.
I think you need a really ugly pragmatist who's going to stick a bunch of men behind the ball, get them to understand how to defend set pieces, and try and hit fast on the counter. Because the one thing that we have got amongst the myriad of attackers that we have got some pace and power in there. And I do think that if you set up, the problem is going to be whether we've got the manpower in defence to do that. But if we can set up so that we're ugly at the back and disciplined, I do think there is something to be said for springing quick and just trying to hit Reed or Aguiar or even Sordell to an extent. And basically hope that you pump it long and that League One defence is making as many mistakes as they do. They will, and we'll capitalise on it. I know that's not what no one wants to hear, but I do think that's how you have a good job of getting out of League One.
Shall we give it a go, Joe?
Yeah. Shall we do some very quick Port Vale preview?
I think all you need to know about Port Vale is they've won. I can hear myself, which is really weird.
Do you want me to pick up? So Port Vale have played 10, but crucially they have won all 5 of their home games so far this season, which I assume is what Paul was going to say. So I don't know whether it's really worth going into any more of it than that. Nathan Smith is a decent player of theirs who recently their manager has suggested could be destined for the Premier League at some point. I think we're going to be in trouble. I can't quite tell. Is it Mark Venus or is it Nicky Eden that's in charge?
Mark Venus, I believe.
I think I'd seen it both ways. I only saw recently that Nicky Eden was at the club. That would pass me by. Was he at Barnsley as a player? That's a resounding
Norwich as well,
no one
I think.
cares. Probably, yeah. Okay. So
I'll just throw this out there. Obviously, when we talk about having a new manager, the name Eric Black gets thrown up quite a lot. According to the Daily Telegraph, I don't think he'll be managing anyone that soon, as he's the latest one to be alleged to be helping clubs buy players.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah,
Oh, Eric Black.
Yeah,
Come on.
He's loved him.
Yeah, Eric Black, the assistant manager at Southampton FC, filmed by Telegraph, advising businessmen how to bribe lower league staff.
Oh. Jesus.
Eric.
So, we got Madison.
I actually, as a final note, I actually asked my wife who she thought we should get in as a manager, and her advice was Alex Ferguson, which, whilst unrealistic, is actually quite a good shout, isn't it? I'm not saying he'd take it, but I do think we should at least approach him because I do think, and I don't want to go too big on this one. I do think he'd do a good job.
That's that one thing that does make me chuckle.
Get her on the pod.
If we got Pep Guardiola and it's like, but surely if everyone says Pep Guardiola is as good as everyone says, this is the sort of challenge that you need. Winning the Premier League with Man City when you can spend a couple of 100 million means fuck all. Making Lewis Page play 10 5-yard passes in a game, that's the challenge. That's what separates the men from the boys.
True.
Like, anyone can make Man City look good. Not everyone can make that shower shit look good.
In his defence, he has made Raheem Sterling. I mean, we're again miles off. He has made Raheem Sterling look like a world-class player all of a sudden, hasn't he?
But the thing is, when he was at Liverpool, everyone thought Raheem Sterling was a world-class player.
Oh, not like this.
But I mean, he was 18, 19 then. You could clearly see that he wasn't shit.
But this is some improvement in the course of a few months, isn't it? I would say. But this is probably
But what I found really interesting, Mark, is you heard what he did what he's done on the training ground.
No, go on.
Apparently, because Raheem Sterling likes to drift inwards, he basically spray painted like a dot on the ground or a square on the pitch, and he was like, just stand there, just like if the ball's over there and you're thinking where the hell should I go, just look for the square and just go and stand in the square. So if you thought, I'll drift inside, think where I'm more in relation to the square, and if I'm too far away from the square, go back to the square. And you're like, that just to a qualified football fan, it's like that makes perfect sense. If you wanted someone to do something, just doing things like that just makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Also doesn't say a lot for footballers' radars for being patronised, does it?
But the thing is,
Raheem, turn yourself off and just stop. That's it.
But the thing is, it's like that. It's like anything like visual. Basically, footballers and builders are the only people who still call their boss the gaffer. It's like, if that's the mentality you've got to deal with that mentality.
That's fair. Is there something to be said for whoever comes in as the new manager drawing a dot on the ball and explaining to defenders that they need to head it when they see it?
Yeah. I wouldn't wish the Coventry City job on any poor bastard.
Okay, on that note, I think we should probably wrap up. So thank you very much to our special guest, Laurie. Laurie, Twitter and your website and everything?
Yeah, just written the latest amazing blog. So that's up thelonelyseason.club.
And thank you, Paul.
Cheers, buddy.
And thank you for sticking with us. Thanks, bye.